Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Bruton Hunter, and I work in the Policy Office at the National Science Foundation. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to another session of NSF Virtual Grants Conference. I am now pleased to announce this session, which will cover the programs in the Directorate for STEM Education, or EDU. This session will be presented by Program Directors Ellen McCallie and Eric Shepard. Take it away.
Thanks, Samantha, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. Eric and I will be presenting, and we're program directors in, we're program directors in the Directorate of STEM Education. I'm in the Division of Research on Learning in Formal and Informal Environments, and Eric is in the Division of Undergraduate Education. But we'll be talking about all the divisions today. And so I'm going to go to the next slide. So the Directorate of STEM Education really focuses on three themes: STEM learning and learning environments, and this is informal and informal, pre-K through postdoc and careers. Broadening participation and institutional capacity in STEM education and institutions, obviously, and then STEM professional workforce development. And so basically, our programs seek to enhance the preparation, increase the participation, and ensure the contributions of individuals underrepresented and underserved in the STEM education enterprise, and to improve STEM learning and learning environments such that all are prepared to contribute to the STEM workforce and benefit from the industries of today and the future. So if you look at this slide, it's busy, there's a lot there, and what it says is that there's a lot to learn about the Directorate of STEM Education. So what we're giving you today is an overview of the programs, and these slides are available to you afterwards, and so you can dig in more. Now, the most up-to-date information is at nsf.gov/edu on the website. So what you'll do is you'll learn a lot about the breadth and the depth of what we do in the Directorate of STEM Education. Then you follow up by learning more about the programs via the website. And then it's appropriate, if you have a concept that you're interested in, you contact a program officer or the alias for the program to get some feedback or to learn more. Also, a lot of the programs have webinars and other resources for you to learn more about the program. And you should always consider being a reviewer. To be a reviewer, you would email the program or program officers with a short CV and a summary of what your research background is, your lived experience, and your professional capacities, such that you could be put on a panel. This is a great way to get to know our programs while serving the nation. So with that, I turn it to my colleague, Eric Shepard.
Okay, thank you, Ellen, and good morning to everybody. So I'm going to get us started talking about the divisions and programs in EDU. So first, the Division of Equity for Excellence in STEM, or EES, division provides support to grow the innovative U.S. STEM workforce by supporting the inclusion and success of individuals currently underrepresented in STEM. This includes the institutions that serve them. Okay, the advanced program addresses systemic gender-based inequities impacting STEM faculty with systemic change strategies. As Alan said, you'll get the slides and you can see the code there if you want to read that in with your phone. The Alliances for Graduate Education and the Professoriate, or AGEP program, aims to increase the number of minority faculty in STEM. The Centers of Research Excellence in Science and Technology Center Awards provide research infrastructure improvement support for eligible minority-serving institutions. HBCU RISE Awards support the development of research capability at HBCUs that offer doctoral degrees in science and engineering disciplines. And the CREST Postdoctoral Research Fellowship Awards provide research experience and training for postdocs at active CREST centers. The Historically Black Colleges and Universities Undergraduate Program, or HBCU UP, supports approaches to prepare HBCU undergraduates for the STEM workforce, as well as STEM faculty research capacity and professional development. Lewis-Stokes Alliances for Minority Participation, or LSAMP, enables successful transfer of students from 2-year to 4-year institutions. That's the bridge to the baccalaureate. Increases undergraduate access to high quality research experiences. That's the REU. And facilitates transition of students into graduate programs. And that's the bridge to the doctorate program. The Eddie Bernice Johnson Inclusion Across the Nation of Communities of Learners of Underrepresented Discoverers in Engineering, or the Includes program, supports broadening participation efforts at scale through collaborative infrastructures. And the Tribal Colleges and Universities program, which is known as TCUP, supports the creation of new degrees or disciplines at tribal colleges and universities, the enhancement of departments or programs, research grants for faculty, and capacity building. And I'll turn it back to Ellen.
Okay, so the Division of Research on Learning in Formal and Informal Settings provides funding for foundational and applied research to advance the understanding of STEM learning and teaching. And this ranges from pre-K all the way to adults and seniors. This includes the design, implementation, and studying of learning environments and the study of technologies intended to engage and enable STEM learning for all students and teachers, as well as the public. So we'll start with the Advancing Informal STEM Learning program. So this program focuses on all the ways you can learn outside of schools, whether it's museums, television, radio, AR, VR, and it really is, these projects that are funded contribute to research and practice that illuminate informal STEM learning's role in equity and belonging, and that they create and enhance the theoretical and empirical foundations for effective informal STEM learning, as well as enhance science communication and the public's engagement in and discovery of STEM and STEM processes. This is the formal education arm that focuses on pre-K through high school. And the goal here is to significantly enhance the learning and teaching of STEM fields by pre-K through 12 students and teachers through research and development of STEM education innovations and approaches. The project should result in research-informed and field-tested outcomes and products that inform STEM teaching and learning. And teachers and students who participate in DRK-12 studies are expected to enhance their understanding and use of STEM content, practices, and skills. Then we move to the iTest program, the Innovative Technology Experiences for Students and Teachers. This is an applied research and development program with goals to advance the equitable and inclusive integration of technology into the STEM learning and teaching enterprise from pre-K through high school. The preparation for the current and future workforce is one of the focuses of the iTest program. I'll turn it back to Eric.
Okay, thank you, Alan. So next we'll look at the Division of Undergraduate Education, or DUE, which supports the design, development, and study of innovative STEM learning environments to improve learning for all undergraduates. So the Advanced Technological Education Program, or ATE, focuses on the education of technicians at 2-year community and technical colleges. The IUSE program supports projects to improve STEM learning and learning for undergraduate students, including studying what works and for whom, and how to transform institutions to adopt successful practices in STEM education. The NSF Scholarships in STEM, or STEM program, supports institutions of higher education to fund scholarships for academically talented low-income students and to study and implement a program of activities that support their recruitment, retention, and graduation in STEM. The Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program recruits and prepares STEM undergraduates and professionals for teaching careers. And now I'll turn it back over to Ellen to talk about the Division of Graduate Education.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. So the mission of the Division of Graduate Education is to enable and inspire an inclusive, equitable, and globally competitive U.S. STEM workforce by supporting students, research, scholarship, and innovations in graduate education. So we'll start with the Cyber Core Scholarship for Service, or SFS program. This program supports scholarship for education degree programs in cybersecurity. Now, if you receive a scholarship for service through the Cyber Core program, the student is then required to return a service obligation following graduation equivalent to the length of the scholarship. The next program in the Division of Graduate Education is Secure and Trustworthy Cyberspace, or the SATC program. This program supports research addressing cybersecurity and privacy, drawing on the expertise of one or more of the following areas: computing, communication and information sciences, engineering, economics, education, mathematics, statistics, and social and behavioral sciences. So there's a lot of flexibility here. It needs to focus on secure and trustworthy cyberspace. The Graduate Research Fellowship Program is administered by the Directorate of Education, STEM Education. However, the fellowships range from all the different divisions and areas that NSF funds. There are two main goals of the GRFP: to select, recognize, and financially support individuals early in their science and engineering careers in order for them to become scientists and engineers, and also to broaden participation in science and engineering of underrepresented groups, including women, minorities, people with disabilities, and veterans. The Innovations in Graduate Education program, or the IGE, supports potentially transformative approaches to graduate education with a focus on preparing students in research-based master's and doctoral degree programs for a range of STEM careers. Now, one of the things you'll notice is this is all about graduate education. Some of these are individual scholarships. Some of these are awards to institutions to support graduate education within the institution. So continuing on this theme, the NSF Research Traineeship Program, or NRT, focuses on effective training of STEM research-based master's and PhD students in high-priority interdisciplinary and convergent research areas. Now, the NRT focuses on a traineeship model that are evidence-based and aligned with workforce and research needs in the areas supported by NSF. There are two postdoctoral research programs. One is fellowships to individuals, and that's this one, the STEM Ed IPRF, and it supports professional development activities for postdoctoral fellows to position them for careers as STEM education researchers. So this is STEM education researchers specifically, and develop their expertise in STEM education research design and methods. Now, while this is an individual focus, the STEM Education Organizational Postdoc Research Fellowship, or STEM Ed OPRF, supports the development of cohorts of postdoctoral fellows as they engage in ongoing research to develop independent research and to implement independent professional development plans under the guidance of an experienced sponsoring researcher. These are awards that are given to institutions to support cohorts, where the previous slide was for individual postdocs. I'll turn it back to Eric.
Okay, thank you, Alan. So now I'm going to talk about a few programs that cut across the directorate and beyond. So these are programs that really don't fall specifically under any one of the 4 divisions, and we work on with program officers from the different divisions. EDU Core Research, or known as ECR, invites proposals for fundamental research that advances knowledge in one or more of the 3 research tracks. And those are research on STEM learning and learning environments, research on broadening participation in STEM, and research on STEM workforce development. We also have the Building Capacity in STEM Education Research Program, which supports activities that will advance STEM education research, including professional development for researchers, institutional training on the use of cutting-edge research techniques, and conferences. The Faculty Early Career Development Program, or CAREER, supports early career faculty who have the potential to serve as academic role models in research and education, and to lead advances in the mission of their department or organization. The Racial Equity in STEM Education program supports bold, groundbreaking, and potentially transformative projects addressing systemic racism and advancing racial equity in STEM education. The Computer Science for All program supports partnerships and research that helps equip high school teachers to teach computer science, K-8 teachers to incorporate computer science and computational thinking in their classes, and school districts to create computing pathways across all grades. The Improving Undergraduate STEM Education Hispanic Serving Institutions program supports capacity building at HSIs to increase the graduation rates of undergraduate students pursuing STEM degrees. And the Workplace Equity for Persons with Disabilities in STEM and STEM Education program supports fundamental, applied, and translational research that advances knowledge and practice about diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible STEM and STEM education workplaces and post-secondary training environments for persons with disabilities. And I'll turn it back to.
All right, so the Proposal and Awards Policy and Procedures Guide, or as we refer to it as the PAPG or the PAPPG, is updated yearly. So you always want to make sure that you're referring to the most up-to-date. So this year it's 23-1, or NSF 23-1. Next year it's NSF 24-1. And it's a long document. You want to focus on the first half, and that's the how do you apply. This has a lot of information, and it supports your application process. And you'll apply either through research.gov, which is an NSF-supported portal, or grants.gov, which is government-wide. We encourage you to take a look at the PAPPG, such that your application is thorough. So you use this in addition to the solicitation or the program announcement that you are applying to. And if you're interested in finding out more about NSF or looking at what's been awarded in a specific program, NSF by the numbers is helpful, and then also the award abstract search. So you could search on a topic and you could see where it's been funded or what is similar has been funded across NSF. This is a really good way to look for matches in a program. Where should you apply? Once you find a program, or you think that there's a program that you fit, that your concept fits, you can go to that webpage, and if you scroll down, it will say recently funded projects. So let's say that Eric had talked about a program that you think is really compelling, that might fit your idea. You'd go to that website, and you'd scroll down and you'd look at what's been funded. And we're not encouraging you to propose things identical to, but to get a sense of what the program funds and how different awards are framed, and to see the range. So those are some things that may be helpful to you as you look for programs that fit what you're really interested about. And at this point, I'll turn it back to you, Samantha, to facilitate questions. And I know that I've answered some and Eric's answered some in the chat, but you may want to pull those back up. We're happy to do that as well.
Okay, this sounds good to me. I will start with just a couple here. Let's start with, to be a reviewer, does an applicant have to be a STEM educator? Would an administrator or grants administrator be welcome to serve as a reviewer?
I think I'll field that, and Ellen, you can add to it. We do on certain programs, for example, the STEM program, we do specifically look for people who have a background in maybe in financial aid and administration, et cetera. And so I think this kind of goes on a case-by-case basis. So as Ellen said earlier, reach out to the program and the program officer. And we're not only looking for academics as well. We're looking for folks sometimes, depending on the program and industry and other areas.
Okay, and is it a requirement that I have a PhD in order to serve as an NSF reviewer?
No. There's no requirement. What we're looking for is the expertise and not just the credential. We're looking for people who have the experience that we need.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to add to that. One person in the chat indicated that they had been rejected in the past. So that's surprising or unusual. So try us again.
Yes. Okay. And that person, I pulled from that, they were saying they had served as a reviewer before and then suddenly we're told they can't serve again because they don't have a PhD. So thank you for clarifying that that is not a requirement. Okay. And let's see, this is a long question. So focus and hear all my words. In the review process, how does NSF take into account innovative, out of the box, and even risk taking if the review panel is not asked this as a consideration? I'm concerned that new ideas may be too far afield, that traditional scholars may feel it is not worth the risk. I think the early resistance to immunotherapy as the woman who advanced the idea, and in parentheses, that was ignored, that woman advanced the idea, is an example of the challenges of wanting new ideas, but also being resistant to them. How do we add risk-taking in the review process as a stronger plus?
Okay, so I'll start. I have a couple of ideas on that one, then I'll turn it to Eric to amend, correct, etc. So first, we have a very specific program. It's called the EAGER program, it's not a program. You can apply through the EAGER mechanism for high risk, high reward. Yeah, you can see in my colleague's eye, it's not a program, Ellen, it's a mechanism.
Not that the policy office in me was coming out or anything, but go ahead.
Absolutely, that's why we do, this is a team sport. So if you look at the PAPPG, the first thing that you'll see, if you search under EAGER, EAGER, is that this is a mechanism for applying for high risk, high reward concepts. And that mechanism asks you to go to directly to a program officer and have a conversation first. Typically, program officers ask you to submit a 1 to 2 page concept so we know what you're talking about. It's really hard to have a meaningful conversation in real time without having read about your concept. And so that's one way for high risk, high reward. The other thing is, a lot of the programs that I think we participate in, we ask reviewers to think about high risk. And we really look at high risk proposals as important. And so it's always interesting to me when folks say, hey, NSF doesn't do this, when in actuality, what we hear from reviewers who are on panels is this is high risk and it's really important. And when program officers come together, we talk about what's high risk. And so we don't fund everything that's high risk. There's a range of things that we fund, but that's one of the things that we fund. So I would ask, don't write us off. We can't fund what doesn't come in, but talk to program officers about it. Eric, do you have some things to add, or Samantha?
The only thing I would add to that is that NSF welcomes high risk, high benefit projects, but it's really important if you're the principal investigator to be careful about putting it in context. NSF is really about advancing knowledge. And so you need to put it in context as to why this particular idea is really critical to advancing knowledge in a particular area, so that both, so the reviewers, it's clear to the reviewers why you really want to do that.
Thank you. And I'm glad you all mentioned eager, because that's, I didn't know what all you were going to say, but I wanted to make sure eager was mentioned, because that's exactly where you should be looking and speaking with the program officer prior to doing so. But you definitely want to look into eager, and that is in the PAP guide detailed there. Okay. So Ellen, you responded to this one already. You did this online, but I think it's interesting, and would like, if you will, for you to respond live as well. Would applying on behalf of a nonprofit organization that has the mission of fostering interest in science by free public lectures, and it just went away, hang on, in person and online, and other educational programs be appropriate?
So absolutely. So I want to approach this in two ways. If you look in the PAPPG, it is very clear about who can apply. And it is, you can be a part of it, IHE, a higher ed institution, you can be a school district, you can be a government entity, you can be a nonprofit. So the only way you would know if there is a restriction is to look in the individual solicitations. And unless it says only so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so can apply, you go back to the PAPPG and you see that all of these institutional types can apply. But you'll note that in most programs, it's an institution that has to apply, not an individual. That's different with scholarships. So unless it says otherwise in the solicitation, all and a range of institutions are welcome to apply. So that's the first part. Now, this particular question was focusing on science communication. So programs that welcome science communication, first I would say, what's your context? Who are you trying to benefit? Who are you engaging? So if it's for specifically undergrads, you may look in the Division of Undergraduate Education, or explore how we talked about the different programs. However, there are the ASIL program, the Advancing Informal STEM Education Program, is about science communication. I happen to work on that program, and so it's ASIL, NSF, AISL. So take a look at that particular program. There are also some programs in the SBE Directorate, Social, Behavioral, and Economic Sciences, that you may want to look into as well. There's some about risk, there's some about science technology studies, but ASIL is a good start, and we may be able to point you other places. Again, give us some context, a one page about what you're thinking about doing. And we don't just fund cool stuff. I mean, as if it's innovative and cool, that's great, but it's also got to have a knowledge building component. We are the National Science Foundation, and so that evidentiary base of what are you trying to learn is really important.
Okay. Next question. If I want to develop a new engineering course for undergraduate students to inspire more students, especially female students, pursuing engineering, would that be something that fits into DUE?
Yes. And so that kind of sounds, depending on the institution you're at, the IU's program that I mentioned. And so anything that advances STEM education for any community and all communities would be of interest to DUE. Okay.
Can a PhD faculty who is interested in retooling apply for a postdoc STEM Ed IPRF or OPRF program?
So this is one that I answered, and I really suggest that you contact the program. So that's a very specific case. And so you should be talking to a program officer. So email them, look at their website. The team that works on one actually works on both. So email them and ask that very specific question. Now, another thing, if you're going to email people with program officers with a question, if you're going to email more than one program officer, either use the alias or email them together. When you blanket all these different program officers and you email them individually, it creates a whole lot more work for us, and we're not coordinating. Eventually, we end up coordinating when we see what's happened. So if you've got a question, email the alias. People do get back to you. And if they don't get back to you in a week or so, ping us again. And then also, if you're going to email more than one program and they're different aliases or different program officers, and you're asking the same question, put it all in one email. That way we can coordinate.
Okay, there's a question about a couple of questions about due dates. This one says, okay, many due dates of the application already passed. So our application is only available during from June to December 2023. So now I'm not, are we talking, does that help, Eric, for you to answer that?
Yeah, I think you may have been looking at the dates that were maybe on the slides or on the website. Most programs have one or two deadlines every year, so they're recurring deadlines. So we happen to be in June, but there are deadlines throughout the year in different programs.
That suggests that I made an error on the slides and didn't update all the dates. I will do that before the slides are posted. That's my fault. My apologies.
Okay, we weren't trying to point out a mistake. We were just asking a question. Is there a new due date? So maybe this will be on the slide too for RAU site announcements. So I think it's probably based on the dates that were shown on the slide. So that'll be something that'll be updated on there. Ellen, is that what you're saying? Okay, good. Let's see. What program or programs would I target for doing project-based learning for UGs, but also linked with them using this research to do authentic learning with K through 12 undergraduates, but also linked, so UG undergraduates, but also link with them using this research to do authentic learning with K through 12?
So I'll jump in quickly here. So that could fit under the IU's program if the main focus is on the undergraduate students. They're also getting some development by working with K to 12. If the undergraduates are at a community college, then that might fit with the ATE program, which also includes interactions with technological education in high schools.
Okay, another question. Is there a program? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ellen.
So this brings up, sometimes it's difficult if a concept crosses over multiple programs, and that's where you would perhaps email multiple program officers. So Eric mentioned that if the primary focus is on undergraduate education, it would probably go through the Division of Undergraduate Education. If the primary benefit or focus of the research is on K-12, then it would probably go through DRK-12. And if not, you really do need to talk to program officers about where the best fit is.
Okay. This is a question about working equity for persons in STEM education with disabilities. Does it also include English learners, ESL, multilingual learner, or international students in STEM education? Or do you have other fun projects for ESL learners?
Eric, I'm going to start and see what you think. So if you are equating ESL with a disability,
right,
no, that's not what that program is for. However, if you're talking about folks with disabilities who are also English language learners, absolutely. In terms of English language learners writ large, think about it. What is the core intellectual and practical component, and where does that fit? So every program that I know has awards that have an English language learner component somewhere in their portfolio. So that's relevant to all of our programs. Is that how you would interpret that, Eric?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Where are the best places for exercise physiologists and biomechanics to apply within NSF? Or does that fit within NSF?
Well, I think so. Again, it depends on what the project is about. And probably for something like that, NSF doesn't fund medical activities and such. So, but if you're talking about learning specific STEM subjects or so that might work. I would use what Ellen suggested before is maybe reaching out individually to a program officer to see what the objective of your project would be, to see if it fits.
Okay, so the theme here is never give up. You want to reach out to someone. If you don't see an answer to your question, if you don't see exactly a fit for what your interest is or what you're thinking, reach out to someone at NSF. If that individual you reach out to, that program director is not the correct one, that individual can then move you to someone else, in thinking it through, talking about it with you. So don't give up right away if you don't see it. Reach out to NSF and let us try to work with you. And we can also let you know if maybe it's not a fit for NSF at all. And, maybe we give you an idea of a different agency, but we will do what we can to help you find your fit within NSF if that's appropriate. Okay.
One more thing to that. So I can't tell from that question what you're trying to learn, or where you're trying to add your intellectual, what the center of gravity. And that's what we really ask you. What are your research questions? What are you trying to learn about learning, or learn about workforce, or learn about capacity building or institutional capacity building? So it's not necessarily about the topic, it's about the setting and what you're trying to learn, and then we help you figure out where it fits.
Okay. Is there a program or mechanism for longer term projects to study longitudinal impacts? For example, 10-year impact, right, of student learning or workforce impacts of multiple cohorts? Someone suggested a continuation grant, but when I looked in the PAP guide, I didn't see how this would work for something like 10 years.
Samantha, do you want to take that with how money expires, or do you want one of us to take it?
You can take it and I can fill in however you want to do it. It's fine, because money would not last for 10 years. It would expire.
Okay, so this is the challenge with NSF. Our awards, as you look in the PAPPG, are typically 3 to 5 years. And that's in part because NSF is not able to make awards past 5 years, because our money expires in 7, and it gets really complicated. So we are, by policy, and help me out with these wordings, Eric and Samantha, but by the way we are set up, for normal awards, unless it's like a huge instrumentation that's millions and maybe billions of dollars, we can't make awards like that. And so you really need to think about how to parse awards and or projects, and set yourself up to do this work now and then reapply later. Colleagues, help me out with this. I know this is frustrating because we do need some more longitudinal work, but it can't be funded up front, as I understand it.
There really nothing more to add. I would just be restating what you said. It's a matter of the funds expiring. We have the 3 to 5 and then allow for the no cost extension, so that it's continuing on. So it's really that 7th year we no longer have access to the funds. So we would not be able to do a 10-year award. So the way we're structured and the way the funds are really given to us. So they would just expire before you got to that 10-year program that we would have in mind. So as Ellen is saying, you could reapply in a different manner, but it would not be that same award. It will be another award following it.
And we don't make 7-year awards because things happen. Things happen means, no cost extensions. You've got to be able to have something go wrong or be different than you expected. Think about COVID. And so we don't make 7-year awards. We typically make them 5 years with the intent of most people finish in 5. But if things change, you can get a no cost extension. And in some rare occasions for the PAPPG, you can get a second no cost extension, which brings you to 7.
Yep. Okay. Okay, so just in case you may have said this, but we're going to ask anyway, does the research on emerging technologies for teaching and learning program lie within EDU, formerly EHR, or a different directorate divisional program? Do you know where that lies?
Okay, so the Reddle program, that would be in DRL, and You'll need to email them specifically. I don't know what the status of that solicitation is.
I know it'll come through to my office, but I don't know where it is at this point.
So typically it's in DRL. So
Yes,
look on the DRL website and then email those program officers. Yeah, so yeah.
Okay, so if we want to establish international research collaborations, academic institutions in other countries, such as in Europe or Latin America, what mechanism would fit better for this purpose?
You want to take this one or shall I start off, Eric?
I'm happy with you starting.
Okay, so all right, so this is something that is interesting and different from a lot of the other directorates, as I understand it. The Directorate of STEM Education, most of our funding is very specifically appropriated and allocated such that it is for domestic activities. And if you look in the PAPPG, it indicates that you need to make a case for why you have international partners. And so most of our research, most of the NSF research out of the Directorate of STEM Education cannot occur overseas. You can have individual partners, but again, you have to make a case for that. For example, if you look at our RCNs, Research Coordination Networks, you're encouraged to have international partners. You're asked for the partners to find their own individual research. So there are some exceptions to this, but unlike a lot of the other directorates, this funding is typically very US based. Colleagues, comments, corrections, etc.? Okay, so if you have a specific program, I would contact that program officer within that program to confirm. But overall, that's how the Directorate of STEM Education operates, because that's how Congress funds us.
Okay, so I'm going to try to get through this one. I'm trying to piece it together. I'll start with the beginning of it. If I'm trying to create an undergraduate research program at an historically underfunded university to foster STEM education and improve the diversity and also ability to become a researcher and also go to graduate school, which program would this fall under?
So I think all of the things that were mentioned there would fall under the IU's program in terms of, because the focus is really on improving undergraduate education. But yeah, again, as Ellen said earlier, if you have an idea, you can certainly reach out to a program officer to see whether it's what your idea is specifically fits.
Okay. Is there a typical place to apply for funding to supply equipment or instrumentation for undergraduate STEM education? Are there educational research components needed for this to fit within DUE?
So the DUE programs, again, probably IUS or maybe ATE if you're a two-year school, doesn't typically just fund equipment grants. We really look for projects to figure out, what makes sense for helping the students learn. If you need to buy equipment in order to do that, and that's justified, then certainly that would fit. But yeah, any project that involves improving student learning at the undergraduate level, the IU's program in STEM, the IU's program would certainly consider.
Can you say some more about BCSER and if the research needs to be the PIs or the PI studying someone else's activities?
Eric, do you work on BICSR or shall I take this one? All right, so neither Eric nor I work on BICSR. However, we both have colleagues who do, and I'm going to read specifically from the program synopsis and then point you to looking at the awards. And the way you look at the awards is you go to the web page, not the solicitation, but the web page, scroll down to the bottom, and it has a list of recent awards. So it says, specifically, ECR BICSR supports activities that enable researchers to expand their areas of expertise and acquire the requisite knowledge and skills to conduct rigorous research in STEM education. Career development may also be accomplished through investigator initiative, professional development, and research projects, or through institutes that enable researchers to integrate methodological strategies with theoretical and practical issues in STEM education. So, for example, I'm speaking tomorrow on how to think about meta synthesis, and it's a BICSR project that's an institute to train scholars, STEM education researchers around the country on metasynthesis. And I'm a guest speaker. So you can do it at an institute level or multiple people. If you're interested in doing it so you're not necessarily studying, you are building capacity. So this is one of our institutional capacity building ones. So if that doesn't answer your question specifically enough, first I'd go to the current awards to get a sense of the range. And remember, you could always expand that range. We can't fund what doesn't come in. And then also to contact our program officer with a paragraph or two about your specific concept.
Right, thank you, Ellen. And I encourage you all continue to send these questions in. You know, you have us right here for you. You have us for maybe 10 more minutes, so take full advantage. I'll ask, how many grants can each PI apply for? Is there a limit in general or specifically?
I'll start this one out. So I don't think there's an official rule that says how many you can apply for. However, we do ask for your current and pending support information. And you know, if you think in a practical sense, if you've got 10 projects, how much can you really contribute to all 10 projects? So that is one of the things that would be used in the review. So you can certainly apply for many projects. They all have to be different. You can't submit the same proposal to NSF to different programs. But yeah, the limitation though would be on your time, because at some point your contributions get thinned out a little bit.
And to add to that, there are some programs that indicate a limit either per institution or per PI. So for some programs, it says a single institution or a DUNS number, which represents institutions or sets of institutions, can only submit, for example, 2 to 3 proposals per submission date or target date, deadline. In other cases, solicitation will specifically say that a PI can only be a PI or co-PI on 2 to 3 or even 1. So what you want, but how you know that? So that, as Eric said, generally, it's your current and pending and your time that limits it. But for the programs that do have these limitations, it's in the solicitation and it is very specifically stated under who can apply.
In addition to the limit on the individual, there may be a limit on the organization. So the organization that would also be listed in the eligibility section of that solicitation. So then you there may be in place at your institution or your organization an internal, competition or internal requirements that you have to meet if there is if the solicitation only calls for 1 per organization. Then your organization would have in place, how do you get to be that one that submits to NSF? So again, as each one has already said, that will be in the solicitation. Any limitations will be listed there. If there is no mention of that limitation, then there is not one. And then you start looking at current and pending support. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Is there a comprehensive list of disciplines that NSF recognizes as STEM?
No.
There we go.
So you want to take this one, Eric?
I'll just say that, I mean, there's disciplines and there's topics. So in the IU's program, for example, we're also interested in English majors learning physics and such. And so, again, it depends on the object. So the object or the focus of the project should be on STEM learning. But some programs, like the STEM program, will have specific fields that it will fund and won't fund. But in general, we really want to see what's the objective of the project.
Okay, I'm deciphering this one. I'm wondering about what distinguishes DRK 12 from ECR in terms of research on learning? Is it that one is more focused on learning in classroom contexts and the other one more focused on learning under more controlled conditions?
Right, so this is a great question, and this actually applies to ECR, Education Core Research, and every single other program that there is in the Directorate of STEM Education. So ECR is foundational research on any topic that relates to STEM education. So actually going back to the question that was, if you've got a project that has to do with undergrads and K-12, the question is, if it's fundamental research as opposed to applied research, anything fits in ECR. If it's fundamental research, it's ECR. Now, that said, most programs accept both fundamental and applied research. So we do have a little bit of overlap or multiple opportunities. So in terms of deciding where to apply, and we'll take the K-12 example. If you read the DR-K-12 solicitation and you say, hey, my work aligns well with this, it's applied work. Or it fits really well and it's fundamental work, but it fits with the specific priorities of DR-K-12. You probably want to start there. Have a conversation with a program officer after you send 1 to 2 pages about your concept. If it's really foundational research, then you may want to start with ECR and a program officer there and mention, not sure where this goes, or email both of them together, not separate emails, and say, this is my concept. But if it's very applied work, it's not ECR.
Okay, thank you. I'm currently a research fellow. I am completely new to NSF and potential opportunities. I would like to study a new tool being developed that connects high school students with STEM professionals in the field. I'm not sure where to start in seeking funding to support my research. Any ideas on where I should start? Just to pick your brain a little.
Okay, so because it says high school, I think that falls under my area. All right, so I would like to study a new tool. So my questions would be, if it's workforce development and K through 12 or anywhere in that range, I would look at iTest. If it is in formal schools, not the informal realm, I would look at DR-K-12. But overall, it looks like you're talking about high schools, and most of the programs that have to do with high schools are in the Division of Research on Learning or in some of the cross-cutting programs. So for example, if you're talking about some of the technologies, it may be in the cross-cutting. So take the slide deck that will be posted. I think it's posted now. We're going to do an update with some of the new solicitation dates if I missed them. And take a look there. Then explore the website, the EDU website a little bit more. But I would start with iTest and iTest, ITEST, which is in the Division of Research on Learning, and DR-K-12.
Okay, so in the last couple minutes we have, would you all like to just recap? I don't see any new questions coming in. Let me look one more time. No, okay. Recap, just really that last question just helped. Where should I start? So what do you encourage the audience? What do you encourage them to do in trying to get started? If you're new or just you want to share a new idea, you want to know where you can get information, where would you encourage them to start? How would they start? New or not new, but they want information from NSF.
So as you heard from all of us, I think, reaching out to a program officer is always great. I strongly suggest that people go to the award search because, several of the questions have to do with, does NSF fund this sort of thing? So if you do it, it's always helpful to do a keyword search because that may help you to find out, oh, NSF has funded things along this line, but also may help direct you to a particular program that you might not have thought about. Keeping in mind that some of the other directorates do have programs that fund educational things as well. So, sometimes that will help you get focused. It's also a good idea, I think, to maybe talk to a couple of colleagues in your campus first to kind of get some feedback on the ideas and maybe focus a little bit, and then reach out to a program officer in an appropriate program.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to add one thing. And when you begin to see, so if you do the keyword search that Eric was looking at, you're going to look at a bunch of different awards. Take note of the programs that funded them. All right, then go to those web pages. Then look at what was awarded. So you're going to start out broad. You're going to get a list of, I'm interested in workforce development. It's going to say ATE. It's going to say IUSE. It's going to say ASL. It's going to say iTest. And then it's going to point you in all these different directions. So then look at those and do a deeper dive. And then look at the range of awards. And it may be that it's just, it's this back and forth of taking a look. Also, if you go on the web pages, if you go to updates and announcements, there are a lot of webinars that are posted that are recordings. Watch the webinars. Yes, our solicitations are long, but those are webinars are typically an hour, but they dig deep into the solicitations. And, if you like to hear about things as well as read about things, and I'll say this, whenever I work on a program, I read the solicitation at least 3 times over to really absorb it. And that kind of engagement is important to understand the nuances of the project, of what's the objectives and the what you can apply for.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Ellen and Eric, for all of your insight. And thank you all for joining us today. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.